Get ready to begin a new era for Spider-Man with the start of the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man arc. Has Marvel brought the character back to form, or are we in for a long, dark night of the soul? Let's find out in Amazing Spider-Man number 61 from Marvel Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Amazing Spider-Man number 61. You know, I gotta get something off my chest. Bear with me, it's a little bit of a rant. I'm sorry, but I gotta say it. Amazing Spider-Man number 61 was it. This was it. After an unequivocally disastrous run by Zeb Wells from issue number 1 to issue number 60, Amazing Spider-Man number 61 was editor Nick Lowe's opportunity to prove to his management, to all of Marvel, and to superhero readers everywhere that he deserves to be the Spider-Man group editor. This was his moment to show the world that the last 60 issues were not his fault. Did Nick Lowe set the haters straight by bringing Joe Kelly aboard and resetting Spidey's place as the flagship hero of the superhero world? The answer is no and no. This issue isn't bad. It's not Paul and MJ making out on the sofa while Peter watches from a corner kind of bad, but using Spider-Man as a side character to hype up Dr. Doom's new role as Sorcerer Supreme just goes to show Nick Lowe has well and truly exceeded his expiration date at Marvel, and he has got to go. Before we dig in, let's at least try to recap a little bit about what happened last time. When last we left old Webhead in Amazing Spider-Man number 60, Spidey's conflict against Tombstone and Zeb Wells' tenure on the title came to an abrupt end, accomplishing pretty much absolutely nothing of value. The less we dwell on the failures of the past, the better. Let's just move on to the issue. Alright, so that brings us to a new day, new creative team. Let's see where we go. In Amazing Spider-Man number 61, Joe Kelly steps into the title to begin the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man arc. One fine morning, we catch up with Spider-Man engaging in crime-fighting shenanigans with a fire-themed villain calling himself Burnout. During the battle, Spider-Man rescues a window washer named Kevin, who is caught in the crossfire. As the fight progresses, Spidey urges Kevin to hold his ever-dropping satchel, which contains Peter's smartphone, camera, an envelope of money that Aunt May gave him to deposit on behalf of Feast, and all kinds of other things. Spider-Man sort of defeats Burnout, but not really, because the villain turns into a flock of firebirds and flies away after receiving a particularly stiff punch. Writer Joe Kelly starts the issue with a standard Spider-Man action scene to ground the reader in Spidey's powers and personality. It's very true blue Marvel. However, dragging Kevin around to hold his stuff, as it were, seems needlessly dangerous, and the lack of clear resolution for Burnout is unsatisfying. In short, the action is pretty good, I would say decent, but the scene as a whole is clunky. Toward the end of the fight, Dr. Doom, who is now the Sorcerer Supreme after the boneheaded and poorly received Blood Hunt event, magically appears to assign Spider-Man a special task. After a harsh exchange of words, which Dr. Doom never really gets the details of the task out, Spider-Man refuses and sends Doom packing with a no thanks. Later, Peter Parker makes it back to Aunt May's apartment, where he has to sheepishly explain and or avoid answering for partially burnt money for the Feast deposit and about a missed lunch with Shay, who is Marvel's now pitifully romantic consolation prize for Peter now that MJ's with Paul. When the pestering gets to be too much, Peter sneaks out and heads up to the rooftops to continue training Spider-Boy, who appears in this issue for no reason whatsoever. He doesn't play a part in anything that comes after this page. The entire scene with Aunt May and Shay and everything else that's going on, where Peter has to kind of explain himself, harkens back to a specific word. The word you're searching for is reductive. If you're playing along at home, judges will also accept the word repetitive. Marvel's need to continually have Peter's friends and family nag him for being an absent-minded, irresponsible boob is long past tiresome. We're just done with it. It was bad during the Wells era, and it's bad now that Joe Kelly's on the title. The constant beatdown comes across as petty sadism. Spider-Man's training session with Spider-Boy is interrupted by a large explosion blocks away. Spider-Man swings into action to investigate, leaving Spider-Boy behind for safety's sake, and then when he arrives at the source of the explosion, Spider-Man finds a red, demonic, armor-skinned behemoth, very Hulk-sized character named Sintros. Spider-Man leaps into action, but his physical attacks are no match for Sintros' powerful frame. Suddenly, Dr. Doom arrives again and gives Spider-Man a lengthy montage explanation about Sintros' presence. Previously, Doctor Strange brokered a deal with Sidorak to create a protective cover around Earth's realm to stave off otherworldly threats from other realms and other dimensions. In exchange, however, Doctor Strange would have to defeat 8 of Cyttorak's progeny in single combat every so often. Strange agreed, but he found a loophole involving these magical reeds that resurrect him if he should die during each fight. 8 challengers must be defeated, and the champion is given 8 reeds to be resurrected. The issue ends with 1 down and 7 more to go. And that's the issue, so let's talk about the positives and negatives, starting with what's great about Amazing Spider-Man number 61. Yes, the entire review leans heavily on chastising Marvel and editor Nick Lowe for their unceasing incompetence, but I can at least concede that Joe Kelly tried to level set Spider-Man back to some sort of palatable status quo. Spidey's battle time quips mostly work. The idea of acting as Earth's champion for a cosmic contest could be interesting in a sort of Secret Wars kind of way. And Spidey's gumption to stand up to Doom shows more courage and grit than we've seen from him in years. Alright, so let's move over to what's not great. The quips that don't work, especially Spidey's obnoxious attempt to quote-unquote rename Burnout, are painfully corny. Again, turning Peter into an irresponsible sad sack is frustratingly reductive. We've seen enough of that. It's time to move on. Let's just stop that, please, and let the man move on from his life. And the 8 deaths concept, once it's spelled out, appears to be super predictable. You know you're not going to kill Spider-Man off. There's 8 deaths with 8 issues. Guess what's going to happen next? He's going to die and fight again and again and again until the end. I mean, you could pretty much map it out yourself and not have to read a thing and still figure out what's going to happen. So, not a great concept to start with. Further, Spider-Man is too important a character to act as somebody's lackey. After a painful run that still stings, and let's be honest, it stings, ASM deserves better than to become a pseudo tie-in series to hype up Doctor Doom, of all people, for his upcoming appearance in the MCU. I mean, let's be honest, that's what this is really all about. Turning Doctor Doom into the Sorcerer Supreme was handled poorly, so permeating that mistake into other titles was and will be the wrong move, especially for this title, which has already been suffering for way too long. Alright, let's switch gears and talk about the art for a second. Ed McGuinness and Mike Farmer take over art duties from John Romita Jr. and Scott Hanna. And the net result is, for me anyway, a visual upgrade. Romita's a legend, not trying to take anything away from him, but his time on ASM did not do Zeb Wells' writing any favors. Of course, McGuinness is a master in his own right, so the action, the acting, figure work, gestures, layouts, all of it are top notch. In general, I'm very happy with how the art turned out in this issue. Final thoughts, what we think about Amazing Spider-Man number 61 from Marvel Comics. Begins a new arc with a new creative team by naming Spider-Man as Doctor Doom's champion to fight and die over and over again to protect the Earth. Joe Kelly does his level best to turn a predictable concept into a meaningful story, but overall the entire issue barely rises above mediocre, narratively speaking. If nothing else, Ed McGuinness and Mike Farmer's art looks great. Therefore, Amazing Spider-Man number 61 earns a 5.8 out of 10. I had a glimmer of hope that a fresh team would turn things around for ASM, but alas, we may have to wait a while longer to get that turnaround that we're looking for. But what do you think? Am I being too hard on Marvel? Or am I not being hard enough? I want you to tell me. Let me know. Do you think I'm crazy, or I'm just being maybe too soft? Leave a thumbs up if this review was helpful, and drop a comment below with your fan cast to take over ASM once the 8 Deaths arc is done. Also, remember to click on the link in the description to read the written review, check out the variant covers and preview pages, and buy this comic to help support the channel. Your support, of course, is greatly appreciated. So, thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.